My name's Jill Rowe, and in this episode of the Different Podcast, Steve Chalke and I talk about thin places, those spaces where it feels like the gap between heaven and earth has disappeared. We chat about how these thin places give us respite and perspective. And through our conversation, we come to see that each day, place and person holds the possibility where we can encounter and notice the divine if we see and understand differently. Everywhere is holy ground, and that changes everything. We even ask what all this has got to do with social policy. We hope you enjoy this conversation. We did. So another podcast episode, Steve.
Which is always a wonderful thing.
We do quite like doing this on a Monday.
Yeah.
I mean, we record them on a Monday, just in case you were wondering.
Well, yes, and it's not
even a Monday, is it?
No, it's not a Monday. I was going to say, what is today? It's a Tuesday.
Is it a Tuesday today?
Yeah, It definitely is. You've skipped a Monday.
Oh, gosh.
But it's,
normally it's a Monday.
What's always true about this is it's a wonderful interruption to the busyness of life.
It is.
You know, to sit and just talk. It's great.
Yeah, it's a privilege. So just recently there was the Aurora, wasn't there? Which when someone first mentioned it, I thought it was like the latest update for Apple on my MacBook. But then I saw that social media just got absolutely full of people who were posting pictures of this incredible
Northern Lights.
The Northern Lights and the electrical impulse, whatever it was that squirted out from the sun, and I just found it absolutely fascinating how there was this awe and wonder thing that suddenly grabbed people. My favourite bit was actually people who completely missed it, took shots of the night sky the next night and coloured it in, which I thought was genius. But no, I've got a friend who just a few months ago paid to go on a cruise, to see the Northern Lights. They cost a fortune, on this cruise for a week and a half, and could have stayed at home and seen them free. I thought you were going to say it was foggy or something. Yeah. So, but it's interesting, isn't it? This awe and wonder, and there's this Celtic idea of thin places, this notion that there are spaces, experiences, people
that lift you out of yourself and the ordinary, that are mystical.
Yeah, the mystical, like heaven touching earth. Yeah. Do you have thin places, Steve?
Well, there's that whole thing, isn't there, that was taught by so many people through the ages. The Celtic Christians first developed this idea of a thin place, a different place, a place that's unusual, where you can go and you can sit or stand or walk, and somehow it lifts you out of the ordinary into something more than that. And they said, it's a thin place because it's the dimension of heaven and the dimension of earth coming together. Breathes hope and joy and peace, well-being into your life. Yeah, I've got.
Have you got any?
Well, I like going running.
Yeah.
A morning run on a Saturday morning if I'm not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
And I can just get up and it's a bright sky and you go running, through some parks and things. That's a wonderful thing.
And do you find it like lifting you out of...
Yeah, it lifts you out.
The mundaneness of...
It lifts you out of yourself. It gives you a clarity. Well, it does me. I'm not prescribing it for everyone. I'm not saying you should start going running. It probably does your knees in or something like that. But for me, it's the peace of it. I just find that I come back, I'm calmer. Everything's more balanced, more in focus. And if I can't go do that, which often happens, I always regret it.
You feel it, yeah.
And then I'm off on my way to go speak at something or do something or go to meetings, and I see someone running. No, they're doing it. Now I wish it was me. So
they're having a thin place.
That's a thin place.
Mine's water, for sure. Like being by... So if I go somewhere where there is going to be some water, I will want to stand or be in the water. Maybe it's the rhythm of the waves and this notion of everything out there is so expansive and I'm just this. Yeah. And somehow I'm part of all of that. And it, again, for me, that's it lifts me beyond everything else that's happening. Yeah. But also I think there's a kind of the thing I'm connecting with God or the divine presence or however you want to describe it. So, water.
Yeah, or just centering on yourself for some people, isn't it? And getting your life in balance. So our next door neighbours are wonderful. They've just done up a back garden. And when I say done up, I mean they've
it's fancy.
Yeah, and they've got a really lovely pond and plants and rockery, and the water comes down and they light it. And we were around their house just a couple of weeks ago on a Saturday night, but they sit outside, and on a warm evening, it's that centering, isn't it? Yeah. So that's the whole thing about it. It centers you, it creates focus for you, it brings energy into your life. Yeah. So that's a thin place. Yeah. It reminds me of a story that I heard from. I think I've written this into a book in the past, but it's a story. It's an old parable, really, and it's told about a master, a teacher, and the novice, and they're sitting beside a lake, and the novice says to the teacher, "How do you keep so calm with all the turmoil in life? Everything that's going on, it's just so difficult to bear." And the master says, "Look at the lake." And the novice looks at the lake and says, "But it doesn't help me. My head's filled with all my crises and problems and turmoils and anxieties." And the master says, "Dive into the lake. Go deep." And the novice dives into the lake and goes deep, and then resurfaces. And the master says, "What did you find?" And the novice says, "Peace." Yeah. So it's that intentional thing, isn't it? Yeah. When you choose to put yourself in a place where you can experience something of some depth in the mind-numbing speed and crisis of life. And that's very hard to do. So I guess, there'll be someone listening to me whispering away and say, "Well, you've not got 3 kids under 4, or triplets." And
not now, but you did.
Yeah. And so all these things are really hard. Yeah. So exactly. And the truth is, when we had 4 kids under 6, and it was a little bit harder to, if only I could have found peace. In fact, I'll tell you, the truth is, there was a little park just up the road from us, just a few houses up. When we lived in Croydon, do you remember? Yeah. There was that little park up the road with a walled garden and a pond in. Do you remember? Yeah. And so I took up this habit of in the mornings, 6, half 6, through a whole summer I did it. I'd wander up the road and I'd sit there in the walled garden by the pond and beautiful plants, etc., and I'd just reflect and pray and sometimes I read the Bible, actually. Yeah. I'd do that and then come back home, and it gave me such a great start to the morning. And until the time when I came in and Cornelia screamed at me, "Where have you been again? You leave me here with these kids whilst you wander up the park and sit there here."
Fair point.
And it's the last time I did. And so that's the point. We shouldn't get too carried away about this stuff, because people live in the hurly-burly of life and they've got all sorts of difficulties. They're carers for people and they've got to get their kids up.
Absolutely.
And they've got to get them out to school, and then they've got to get to work, and then they've got to, get home, and they've got to prepare a meal and be homework experts and children to bed, and and they repeat that 5 days a week, and on the 6th day of the week, the Saturday, they become the taxi driving service and the sports coach and all the rest of it. And so finding this in life is is hard, and at different points in life, it's harder to find it.
Yeah, and to that point, sometimes these kind of things can be actually quite unhelpful for people, can't they? Where's your thin place? Because it's like, oh shoot, I need to find a thin place.
Well, a lot of people say,
But there's a flip side to it for me, Steve, which is, and of course, there's all the beauty of it, and so I get all of that. But one of the things for me has been this. So I like to go to Greenbelt Festival, and I've gone for years and years and years. Gosh, a long, long time. So for me, because of when it happens, so it's the end of the summer break, and when I was a teacher, that was great, and even now it's great because it's like this place that sets you up, and so you have all these places and spaces and people that feel like this connection between heaven and earth. But the more I've thought about it and the more I've realised that actually everything is full of the presence of God.
Yeah.
All the time, every day.
Yeah.
And even, in hurly-burly stress, anxiety, worry, I just spent 3 weeks in hospital. Even that was a thin place.
Yes.
Because that bit where Moses is standing in front of her. Was it Moses? No, it wasn't Moses.
I don't know what you're going to say. He was standing
in front of the burning bush.
That was Moses, for sure.
A weird moment. I thought it was Monday.
Well, I guess
Tuesday.
Lots of people have stood in front of burning bushes through history, but I think Moses was the original.
But take your shoes off. It's holy ground. It's got nothing to do with the tree or that precise. It's actually everything is spiritual, right?
Yeah. Well, I think there's lots to demystify in all of this, isn't there? I mean, the first thing I was going to say earlier, for some people, just the chance to stay in bed
is a thin place.
It's a really thin place, I mean, genuinely.
Yeah, no, seriously.
A chance to stay in bed and not have to get up to an alarm clock. Or, sometimes some of our grandchildren come and stay with us for a sleepover. And I know that creates a real thin place for their parents because it's like we haven't got to get up at 5:30 in the morning and start, so we've got to be realistic about all of this. The second thing I say is, when the Celtic Christians said, that a thin place is the bringing together of heaven and earth. I think you got to demystify what heaven is. Because people think that heaven is this place when you go, after you die. It's above the clouds. It's above the planets. It's somewhere out there where we all float around like angels, all bright and glowing.
Like the Simpson
and all that
clouds.
Kind of stuff. So what the term heaven means, Jesus always says, the kingdom of heaven is amongst you. Heaven is here.
Yeah.
Heaven is God's dimension, earth.
Yeah.
It's using the term not literally for earth. It's the realm of stuff where crap is always going on. And heaven is that place where God's peace comes.
Yeah.
So why Jesus says heaven is here, it's amongst you. It's not here or there, it's amongst you. And so it's in search of that, isn't it?
It's that on earth as in heaven thing, isn't it?
And the last thing I think is the term holy as well. That, as you say, all ground's holy ground. Because the question is, what on earth's holy mean? And there's I had a friend who didn't go to church very often. In fact, he's quite a good friend. I know him. And I remember going into a big old church building. It was a big old Anglican church, I think, or perhaps it's a Catholic one. And we walked in the back. And he was talking because he's a very funny guy and he's very loud and all that kind of stuff. And he was loud outside. And once he went through the doors of the church, he got quieter, And he said, and instead of being loud, he was like considered, and then we were walking to the front, and I noticed the further to the front we got, the quieter and quieter it got until we were by the altar, and he was like almost
brawling.
And then he said this great line. He said, "I know God lives here, but I think He lives at the front, not at the back." So we got to be real quiet because we don't want to upset him. It was very funny at the time. God living at the front, so you had to kind of like... And of course, the term holy is an old word that means different. That's all it means. Different, same as the title of our of this thing.
Funny that.
It just means different, a different place, a different dimension.
Yeah.
Different, separate. Sometimes people have said holy means separate, as in apart from.
Yeah.
But it's not keep yourself apart from these people and be holy. Jesus threw himself in with everyone. It's about being different. It's about being different and bringing that difference. So everywhere is holy, as you say, absolutely everywhere. Kitchen sink can be holy. The back garden can be holy. All of these people are thin places, and I think, or can be thin places, and I think as well, people.
Absolutely.
There are thin people.
Yeah.
Again, I don't mean that literally. In fact, some of the thinnest people I know are quite chubby. You see what I mean? Being in their presence is a joyous thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was with someone last night, actually, I'd never met before. Her name's Camilla. She's a government minister in another country and had invited me to dinner to talk about some of the stuff we do.
Yeah.
And so I thought, oh, this is going to be, well, you don't know, you're going to sit with a government minister. But the moment I was with her, I realised she was real fun, and she was a Eurovision Song Contest fan, and she loved ABBA. She knew who Bucks Fizz were.
Oh my word! Did she mention Brotherhood of Man?
Everyone. She knew the whole thing. She sang the songs and joked along and all those. She was just a tonic to be with.
Yeah,
that's the truth.
Yeah. So everywhere is full of the possibility and the richness of God.
Yeah.
As our people.
Yes. We're recording this in Waterloo, and as you know, we developed a farm. We call it the Oasis Farm Waterloo, but it's not much bigger than an acre of land. I'm not quite ever sure how much an acre of land is, but it's not much bigger. But it was a rubbish dump, as you know, and we cleared the rubbish dump and built a barn and built a place for some sheep and some goats and some other animals and laid out some gardens and growing things. And we do this thing called farming therapy, as you know, and children from our schools, children and young people who can't regulate themselves in a classroom of 30 because of the struggles of their life, they come across and they spend an afternoon on the farm in the middle of a city with all its noise, but it's an incredible place of peace, isn't it? Yeah. And so popular is this, other schools, nothing to do with Oasis, ask if they can bring children there as well, because it's a calming thing. So our farm in Waterloo is a thin place.
Yeah. So if we know that this is the impact it has on people, so somebody the other day, I was talking to them and they were so kind to me. They were so kind to me, but they said, when you talk, you smile and it makes me feel seen, which was a beautiful thing for someone to say. No one's ever said that before. But there's a massive thing for me about if everything is spiritual and every space and environment and person that we encounter is rich with this presence of the divine. Why is it, when we know that then causes, for those young people who come to our farm, or it brings them more alive, why is it that we just don't seem as a nation to be able to engage with the power of spirituality when we're thinking about social policy, or we're thinking about education even, or we're thinking about why this secular sacred divide thing that happens that is so dismissive of...
I think it's a tragedy that it does happen. Well, I think there are probably several reasons for it, probably more reasons than I can appreciate for myself. But I think one of the reasons is that people get spirituality muddled up with religion, and they don't really like religion very much because religion's been so oppressive and so judgmental and so full of rules and regulations and who's in and who's out and who's worthy and not worthy and all of that kind of stuff. So many people are scarred by this. It's been wounding for them. It's been traumatizing for them. It's not been healing.
Yeah.
It's a strange thing, actually, but that the word religion means, well, it comes from the same root as the word ligament.
Yeah.
Your ligament gives you connection and movement.
Joining,
and religion means to reconnect, connect you with God, connect you with self, connect you with others. But it's become the very reverse of that. For some people, it's become this place of judgment and exclusion. And I don't think that helps. Spirituality is about that reconnecting. It's reconnecting with yourself and others and with the transcendent, with God. And I think that's really important. The way I explain it to myself and to others is, that little inner voice that you have, that internal conversation that goes on in your life the whole time. And for some people, the internal conversation is always, you're useless, you're no good, you're ugly, you're old, you're thick, you don't count, you don't fit in, no one likes you, look at them, they wish you weren't here. And that little voice keeps feeding doubt into your life and bringing you down, so that whatever happens externally, you can be given opportunities, and you can be given, you can be given a new house. All the external social stuff can change, but the poverty is inside you. That's the truth. So you can get rid of external poverty, and we know a lot about this, don't we? With our with community development or our struggles with it, you can create all sorts of opportunities. But if that inner voice, that little inner voice, that dialogue inside you is saying, you don't matter, you don't count, you're nothing, you're crippled. So spirituality for me is about the inner journey, the journey into yourself, which is why thin places, thin people, a place where you can find refreshment becomes so important, because only in that journey into yourself do you find the harbour and the launch pad for getting external. It brings hope.
Yeah, and it's just, this is not a thought through thing at all, Steve. But it's just interesting when I think back to one of the other podcasts where we talked about attachment theory and how safe attachment, secure attachment gives you that launch pad. It helps you feel safe, secure, seen, able to thrive, a place to come home to. For me, I think when I think about my spirituality and I think about my understanding of who God is and how that works out, how I've tried to work that out and how I navigate that around the life message and example of Jesus, I feel like that safe harbour thing, that attachment theory almost finds its place for me spiritually as well, and has grounded me and continues to ground me.
That's a wonderful thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's a thing not to take for granted, and it's the thing to work at. Do you know that phrase, I'm going to work on myself?
Yeah.
Well, how do you work on yourself? Find space in the busyness of life, however it is, to reflect, to stop. I would say again, when our kids were growing up, I had another little thing. Once a month, I think it was at the time, in a work day, I used to drive out to the country and just sit in a car, and I thought I'd just in the country reflect, and 9 times out of 10 I just fell asleep, and that's what I needed, sleep. So all of this is, I don't want to give the impression that this is simple, but unless you tend to your inner self,
I think that's a good word.
Yeah, you've got to tend to your inner self and find people or places, smidgens of time, friends that those few friends that you can sit and honestly talk with and cultivate spirituality.
Yeah.
Sometimes a thin place can be a film that you watch, can't it? Sometimes it can be a play that you see, a painting that you look at, a poem that you hear. There's no dictionary of what thin places are and aren't. They're those moments, those people, those experiences that speak to you and transcend, to use the term you've used, your daily experience and lift you to a different place, to equip you for life, for the humdrum of it.
I love that. It's a verse, I think it's in one of the Psalms, where it just says, be still and know that I am God. And then there's this practice that you can do, which I just find really peace-bringing, where you just say, be still and know that I am God. Be still and know. Be still. Be.
That's a good place to be.